Kelli Dunham.
A number of deaths, apparently from E. coli, actually. So I grew up in a stoic, Germanic, Midwestern farm family. How stoic? How Germanic? Well, my sister went to the public library and brought home, you know, the Free to Be You and Me, that 70s touchy-feely album, you remember, right? So we're sitting in the living room, and my sister puts it on, and that song, the Rosie Greer song, where the football player is singing, "It's all right to cry." My dad comes through the living room, looks at his assembled 7 children, and says, "I hope nobody's getting any fucking ideas around here." And we just shook our heads because nobody was getting any fucking ideas. Any complaint in my childhood would be met with one of 2 things. My dad would say, "There's more to life than being happy, you know," which is true, but there's more to life than breathing, but breathing is a good start. Or he would say, "Most people are just about as happy as they make up their mind they're gonna be." That was a quote he attributed alternately to Abraham Lincoln or Dale Carnegie. Now I know that the strength and perseverance that kind of interesting parenting gave to me, it's useful, right? But as a child, I just wanted Rosie Greer to be my dad. Or Mr. Rogers, maybe? Like, we used to watch Mr. Rogers. We'd gather around our black and white television, and we'd watch him like he was an alien from another planet. He'd sing those songs, those emotional ballads written from the point of view of the kids. You know, I like to be told if it's going to hurt, if I'm going to cry. In 1970s Midwestern parenting, that was heresy. The idea that children's feelings should be factored into any of the equations. And I guess it's because I grew up in this stoic, Germanic, Midwestern farm family that when I first started performing, I never wanted to spend the time before the performance in a green room. Instead, I would often do it in the lobby. And that's why I just felt like it was very precious, you know? My accountant, he doesn't need a special room to go into, to get into accountant space, you know, or to get into accountant character before he does my taxes, right? He just does my taxes. And even when he gets me a really good refund, I never give him a standing ovation. So, ever since I discovered I was queer, for obvious looking in the mirror reasons, I left the Midwest, and most of the time, my adult life, I've lived in large Mideastern cities. So I was really excited when, a few years ago, I got a call asking me to perform at an Oshkosh comedy club. It was the closest I'd been to my hometown in 30 years. I got to the comedy club, and it was an abandoned flower shop, and the audience chairs were seats that my host explained had been ripped out of school buses. Wrecked school buses. Why there were so many wrecked school buses in rural Wisconsin? My guess, stoic Germanic people not wanting to cancel school for a snowstorm. So I stood in the lobby, as I usually did, and I chatted, and there was a guy, gray hair everywhere with a John Deere cap over it, and he was pacing back and forth. And every time he'd pace, he'd get a little bit closer to me. And finally, he got close enough to speak, and he said, "I have something important to tell you." Now, he didn't say, "I have something important to tell you, would you like to hear it?" He said, "I have something important to tell you, I think I'm your biological father." And I said, "Oh." I said, "Oh," because I did not expect to be having that conversation. And I said, "Oh," because there was a dude who lived in my house when I was a kid, and I had always presumed that he was my biological father because I called him father. But once this guy had gotten started, he could not stop himself. He was like, "I think I'm your biological father. You know how your mom had all sorts of affairs?" didn't know that my mom had all sorts of affairs. But he kept going. He's like, yeah, so your mom had all sorts of affairs, and then I was one of them, and then I was doing the math, and I was figuring out the timing, and I've been following you on Facebook. I was like, very creepy use of Facebook. And I think I'm your biological father. So then he reaches into his pants and pulls out a completely sweat-soaked piece of paper that had his AOL address on it. So he handed it to me, and I began to take it from him, still not having said a single word. And then I hear, and now we'd like to bring to the stage Kelli Dunham. So I walked onto the comedy stage, holding the piece of paper with my alleged biological father's AOL address on it. And I was confused, but I was also angry. Like, why here? Why now? He came in and sat on the front row and drank beer after beer. And he did not laugh as much as I thought he should if he was actually biologically related to me. And he left during my closer, and there was 7 empties on the table beside him. After the show, I called my girlfriend, and she says, well, like, what do you think? I mean, could he be, does he look like you? And I was like, it is rural Wisconsin. The gene pool is that deep. Everybody looks like me. And I considered my options, right? Like my presumed biological father, he died when I was a teenager, so I couldn't fact check with him. And my mom, I mean, we'd had a really long time of not even being in touch after I came out to her. Unless I was really sure, I couldn't bring it up. It would just be too awkward a conversation. But then I was thinking that my mom kind of has a type, right? Emotionally stunted, stoic, heavy drinker. And this dude, he had definitely shown that that's what he was, right? Mr. Rogers would not come out to his biological child like that. And so I realized that unless one of us needed a kidney, there was no real reason to figure out who was biologically related to me. And then I didn't get in touch for the same reason you don't send back food at Red Lobster. You know there's nothing better in the kitchen. But a couple things I learned from this. One is for you all. If you think that you are the biological parent of a comedy performer, if you think that is the case, you should tell them after and not before the show. And for myself, I learned I'm not too precious. I just use the damn green room. Thank you very much. I'm Kelli Dunham.